answers, man. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers, Sway.
How much do you love money? Do you love it as much as I do? Stay hungry, stay foolish. New car. What do you think?
Hey there, welcome to Startup Chat episode number 66. Today we're chatting with Adam Franklin from Blue Wire Media, and Adam is also the author of the latest web marketing book called Web Marketing That Works. And Adam was one of the inspirations for me in getting into content marketing, and we talk about what works and some of the stuff he's done that hasn't worked and some of the themes that have come out of his efforts in content marketing and general web marketing and social media. He's a really nice guy and a really smart guy, and definitely one of my mentors. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Before we get to the end of the episode, just a couple of things. First of all, if you're listening and you feel like giving us an iTunes review, that would be much appreciated. We haven't had any for quite a few months, and I'm desperate to read some out on the show. So please head over to iTunes, put in Startup Chat, and leave us a nice review there, and that would be awesome. The other thing is we're running a competition for this episode where if you go to wpcurve.com/66 and go to the comments at the bottom of that page and enter in your biggest marketing mistake or the thing that you've wasted the most amount of time or money on. And for me, it's going to be something related to SEO. But any web marketing mistake or general marketing mistake that you've made and something you've done that just didn't work. So we'd love to hear from you on what didn't work. And hopefully in this interview, you'll discover some of the things that did work. Now, that competition is to win a signed copy of Adam's book, Web Marketing That Works, and we'll draw that on the 21st of May 2014. So if you're listening to this podcast afterwards, then the competition's not valid. But I've checked out the book and I'm halfway through it at the moment. It's a great book and I highly recommend it. So I hope you enjoy the interview and I'll talk to you soon. Hello everybody, welcome to Startup Chat episode number 66. I'm joined by Adam Franklin from Blue Wire Media and the author of the new book, Web Marketing That Works. And can I show that book, Adam, or is that not supposed to be out yet?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Dan.
So that's the book if you see it in the shops, which I'm sure you would. And I actually started reading it this morning and I got that far, which is pretty impressive. It's very, very good.
Nice.
So Adam, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
So it's an amazing book. I'll get to talk about some of that stuff soon, but maybe if we just start with a bit about yourself and how you got started and who you are.
Absolutely. Well, like you, Dan, I actually started off many years ago, nearly a decade ago, starting with a web design business. And as the industry has evolved, we've now discontinued doing that. But we are all about web marketing. And so we'll give advice to companies and to individuals who subscribe to our Blue Wire News advice and templates and tips and training on how to really make the most of the web and build what I call a web marketing asset. So as opposed to, say, paid advertising, we have to reach into your pocket, pay money, or pull out your credit card and pay money for an advert that is there for either one click or for a certain amount of time, and then it disappears. I'm not as big a fan of that because it depreciates so quickly, whereas if you're building a web marketing asset, anything that you're doing is here today, it's here tomorrow, it's here next week and next year. So things like blog posts and YouTube videos and Google Hangouts that are recorded and podcasts and ebooks, everything you're doing when you're publishing that type of content is staying online and you're building a bigger asset which more people can find over time, and that will actually pay dividends and increase in value as people comment, as people share, and as people actually interact with the content that you're creating. So I'm all about building the web marketing asset.
No, that's good. That's something we think about a lot in our business. We've only got a limited amount of time, and we make sure that we spend time on things that are building assets, and a lot of that is content, but all of it's also just things like brand and like we're big on recurring revenue. So I see our like recurring customers as an asset, and we'll do anything to get a recurring customer, but we won't do anything for a fixed price project because to me it's not an asset. It's kind of like a one-off thing. So I really like that thinking. I'll come back to that, but can we go back a little bit? And I know you guys started with the web design business, I think probably a year before I did. I started in 2006. I think you probably started a year before that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So how did you start? Like what gave you the idea to start your company, and what did you do? What was the first thing you did?
Yeah, great question. So we're going back the 10 years, as I said. Toby and I
like
both non-technical. It does feel like a long time. Toby and I are non-technical, so at the very start, we actually had a third business partner who had the web development skills, but he decided to leave after the first couple of months, which was fine because Toby and I then saw this opportunity. We wanted to run a business. We didn't necessarily want to learn the technical skills. So that was fine because we could then hire those skills. And our philosophy was always, well, if we can market and do sales and run a business and manage people, that's the sort of business that we want to be building. And so we did that, and we've remained non-technical, even though you sort of, acquire some sort of technical skills via osmosis just by being involved with it all, but certainly not a programmer or developer. So that was the early days. That's why we started. We wanted to run a business. Web was something that wasn't going to go away, and there was very low barrier to entry. And Tobes and I had just spent the last couple of years sort of doing our different things overseas. He was playing water polo, and I was just traveling around the world having a good time. So we didn't have a whole lot of money at the start. In fact, we started with $120, and from there we kind of grew.
Seed round.
Yeah, seed round. Yeah, exactly. To buy a domain name and a year's worth of hosting for our email account. We started without a website. We were a web design company with no website. We had no portfolio. So we were literally pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, asking people, did they need a website? And we got rejected every single time for the first 2 weeks. Then we evolved to cold calling, which was also met with a lot of rejection. And we were basically then having to realize we had to qualify our leads a bit better. So we went through the local, what was called, or is called, the Brisbane News, and we looked for companies that were advertising, who obviously had enough money to advertise in this publication, but didn't have a website listed. So we'd do a quick Google search to check they didn't have a website, and if they didn't, we'd chop them out of the paper, add them to the list, and cold call them. And that eventually led to a couple of inquiries. But actually, our very first piece of business came through a referral from our old water polo coach. And that was when we realized the power of the network and our community, and that is an incredibly valuable asset because people will recommend you and speak highly of you, and that passes on a whole lot of trust. So our very first customer came through that referral network.
Yeah, that's a nice story. I guess there's a couple of themes that I'm picking up from the book and that I've sort of associated with you since I've known you. And one of those is sort of the community networking type aspect, but also just that aspect of being generous. And you've got a story in the book around very early on where you started doing designs for companies just to get some attention. Like before they would even talk to you, you would do a design for them and show them that design, and then maybe they would employ you. And I think it's sort of like an ongoing theme throughout the book where you're basically creating value for people. You're being generous, and it might not pay off straight away, but eventually it kind of comes back to you.
Yeah, that's totally our marketing philosophy, Dan. And even back in the early days, as I said, we had no website, no portfolio, no clients. So we realized that, we were getting rejected knocking on doors, we were getting rejected with cold calls. We really had to lead with generosity, and that was sort of one of the realizations. We had to go and say, well, look, we can create a mocked-up design of what your website might look like if you take the meeting with us, so that we actually bring something to the table. And once we were offering something of value, people were a lot more receptive to us coming in. There was still a hell of a lot of rejection, don't get me wrong, but it was opening the door to get started. And that's basically all we could do back then, because we didn't have any reputation, we didn't have any portfolio or anything or results to show people.
Yeah. Before we get into the details of the marketing strategies, can we talk briefly about how your business is evolving? I know when I met you, you were running what was a pretty traditional sort of agency, and that seems to have changed a little bit in the last couple of years. So what changes are happening there, and why are they happening?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the traditional web design business was how we started out, and it was fine. It allowed us to cut our teeth in business, but it wasn't the best business model as you've written about and spoken about, and we've spoken about. In that, not only do you have to win the business in the first place, which essentially costs you money as you do proposals, you do meetings. In our early days, we were doing mock-ups. But then you've also got the fact that you only get paid once. So you do a website project for however many dollars. If it runs on time and if you get paid on time, then you get paid once. And then that job's done, and you've got to go looking for the next job. So you're on this treadmill. You've always got to win a new project to get new money in. No sort of recurring revenue. And we always knew that a recurring revenue model was best, and so we looked for ways that we could try to evolve that. So over the years, what we did was we had these update and support packages where clients, once we did a website, they would have to buy, or they would choose to buy, a 10, 20, 50, or 100-hour update and support package. So they'd prepay hours for ongoing support with us, so that at least we were getting more business from that existing client, and that commercial relationship would continue. But again, you're still trading 1 hour of time for some money, which isn't very scalable. And we would take on as many as 10 or 12 staff, which is very expensive. But we would still that would just mean we'd have to win more and more work and sell more of these updates and support packages. So we did eventually try and get people onto monthly retainers for ongoing set work, but it was quite a challenge. Because sometimes people would say, well, let's just put it on hold for a month or two while it's Christmas or they go on holiday. And you can't force people to pay you, but that throws a spanner in the works because you've still got to pay all your staff for that period of time, but you've now got that chunk of money not coming in anymore. So it was, as you would have probably experienced, it's a real roller coaster ride. It's either feast or famine, because sometimes 3 or 4 people might want their project done at once, but you've only got one set of resources. And so you have to either take people on, and there's that challenge, and then once that work's over, then you've got all these mouths to feed, and you've got to go looking for the next piece of work. So it was a challenging business model, and we knew it. Mentors explained that to us from the early days, and we've always just been looking for a better way to do it, which is, I guess, why.
And what does that better way look like? Like what steps are you moving towards now to do something slightly different to that?
Well, now we've discontinued the actual web design implementation or social media management. Now we're a purely advisory business model. So we will go in and still do web strategy workshops. We'll do training days, either privately for corporates, where we train them in social media. So we get up and stand in front of the class and teach, whether there's 2 people or 20 people, it's the same amount of effort, but the more people we get along, the more scalable it is. So there's the training. There's also online courses. So we take exactly what we do with our private clients and in our private workshops, and we release that content in a online course so that people can get the exact same workbooks. And so we've released that in January, and we're really now in the process of fleshing out that course by adding training videos and building that out across all the different product and knowledge areas that we have, so that all of our subscribers can now access that same information. So essentially that business model is we make it once, and we get paid, hundreds of times over, because people are just buying that one course, which we've already made, which is in stark contrast to the website business, where you build something, you get paid once, and you've got to build something again and get paid once.
Yeah. And what about other stuff? Do you do like affiliate marketing or well, obviously the book will be a revenue stream, that kind of thing?
Look, we do a bit of affiliate marketing. If there's products that we use and we really like, we know the people and really like them. We do. We sort of resell ebooks that we've used and found very valuable, or online courses, or even your WP Curve product. We're an affiliate for that. So anything that we believe in, that we've seen and that we use, then that's the sort of stuff that we'll pass on. It's not a huge amount of revenue, but more revenue comes from our own products. But yes, the book and public speaking and workshops as well are more scalable areas of the business. Okay, cool.
I've got a couple more questions before we get into the book. Actually, one mainly. When I think about when I first met you guys and came across Blue Wire Media, what sprung to mind was, I mentioned like the kind of generosity, or just being confident about. What's the best way to put this? I think the way I think about things, and this is a definite theme in your book. When I first got a job, I worked for an entrepreneur who was running a HR consultancy, and all of their kind of trade secrets were tied up in intellectual property that clients paid a lot of money for. And the idea of them, helping out a competitor or linking to a competitor or releasing some of this content for free would never have ever been a point of discussion. So the first time I kind of came across that way of thinking, I think, was when I met you. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was quite a while ago. I met you at Main Beach in the unit. I think you were living there, and you kind of just had a chat to me, and and you put a link on your website to go through to mine for some of the lower end jobs that you weren't doing, and you were very generous with your time. And even at that stage, you guys were doing content. I'm not sure if the planning template was out, but I think you had started doing a lot of content on your blog. So where does that come from? Is that purely from, like you mentioned, the book that you've read a lot of these books from Dave Meerman Scott and Seth Godin and all of that? Is it purely that, or is it just an inbuilt kind of thing that you just feel that it's a philosophy that is going to help you, and it also, is something you enjoy?
Yeah, the philosophy sits really well with us, but it certainly wasn't something that we dreamed up or or that we just discovered by accident. It really was trying to emulate the people who we admired, to mimic the masters, so to speak. And it originally came from, we had heard all about Vern Harnish and his one-page strategic plan back in the early days of our business. Our mentors and peers and everybody kept talking him up and saying how great this one-page plan was, and it was a free download. So we went ahead and we downloaded it, and it was excellent, perfectly free, no catch, and it was great because it helped us plan out the strategy for our business. And from that, because that was so valuable, because it had come recommended, we then decided to read his book and to attend his conferences, and we've been big advocates ever since. And so when Toby and I were looking at, well, who do we want to emulate? We thought, well, Vern is somebody who, we've gone through this process with him where he's delivered value for free via this free tool, and it's, we've received value before we've even spent any money with him. And so we've gone on to go to his conferences and whatnot all around the world and his workshops, but we just really wanted to emulate that for our clients and give them a tool that was really easy to understand and provided, a framework for their web marketing. And so we were looking to emulate that, and at the same time we also actually saw David Meerman Scott for the first time present and read his book. And a lot of the framework and the idea of buyer personas and publishing great content was all stuff that we learnt through him, and it sort of validated what we'd been experiencing with our own clients and with our own blogging. And it also provided a language that enabled us to explain things more clearly to our clients. And so we basically put that language and those ideas into the planning template, which was modelling Vern's one-page strategic plan, and those two things put together formed the web strategy planning template.
Oh, that's cool. I remember all this happening at the time. I didn't kind of know what was going on behind the scenes. I just saw you putting out the template. And why don't we get into we'll get into the marketing side of stuff. One of the, I suppose, themes or points in the book talks about creating a piece of flagship content, and you've just talked there about getting some inspiration from Vern Harnish and then David Meerman Scott. How did that end up happening with your web strategy template, especially with the David Meerman Scott involvement?
Totally. Well, because he'd been such a big influence on our thinking and on the planning template itself, Toby actually sent him an email just to say, hey David, thanks so much for all the ideas in your book. It really resonated a ton with us, and we've put together this planning template to basically help show our customers what goes on in their web universe, and to explain your idea of a buyer persona, and to explain that you need to be publishing content, but there's not just your website, it's not just a blog, there's all this social media, there's search, there's things that actually happen on your website as well. And we basically showed it to him to express our gratitude for his influence on it. And he basically, we were very fortunate, but he wrote back and said, look, I'm working on something similar. I really love what you guys have done. Tell you what, how about we co-brand it? If you're happy to, we'll co-brand it. We'll put my details on the footer of the document, and I'll blog about it, and I'll use it as well in the presentations and the keynote presentations that I do around the world. So Toby and I were rapt with that. We were thrilled because obviously David we looked up to a lot. And he liked what we'd created, which was, validation that we're on the right path as well. And he wanted to co-brand it with us as well and help promote it. So it was a huge win for us, and it just gave us confidence, and it really opened the door and gave us that flagship piece of content, which people, just like Vern had done with us, people could download and interact with and use before they'd even met us or before they knew us too well. So we could deliver value before any sort of commercial meeting or commercial offer on email took place.
So when you met him, was it a surprise that he sent you that email? Like, did you have any relationship with him before that? Before he
We
agreed
had
to
done a
kind of
Skype
co-brand
interview
it?
with him. So we saw him present via satellite at the Growth Summit in Sydney. He was beamed in from the US. We loved what he had to say, so we bought his book, we read it, and then we hit him up for a Skype interview, much like we're doing now. So that kind of allowed us to get to know him a little bit, sort of cemented a kind of relationship there, and we just kept in touch via the odd email. But so we did have a connection already. And then when we just emailed him the planning template, the draft of it anyway, and he wrote back saying how much he liked it.
That's really cool. And what results have you had from that? Like, have you counted the downloads, or have you got any sort of quantifiable results?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a number of we have. So we've had over 10 or 15,000 downloads from our own website in terms of people that have actually, given their email address in exchange for that. So through the gated content. It's been in his best-selling book as well. This is the 3rd and 4th edition of his book called The New Rules of Marketing and PR, which was really cool because that's the book that inspired us in the first place, and to be included in the 3rd and 4th edition is a huge thrill. And that's sold over 300,000 copies. So David estimates that the last couple of editions have sold over 100,000 copies. So it's been hopefully seen by all of those readers as well. Not to mention the fact that David's got it on his website as a free download, and we had it up on our own website for 12 months before we actually put on a opt-in form. So there was 12 months worth of people who downloaded it, but we don't know who they are because we didn't insist people put a web address, an email address, and a name on there.
Yeah, that's always a bit of a question, isn't it? Like you want to get the email opt-in, but you also want to be generous and you want to get it in front of as many people as possible.
Yeah, the balance we actually, because that was something that bothered me for a long time, whether to put the opt-in form or whether to just share it completely free. And in the end, when we actually went to see David's workshop, David Millen Scott's workshop, and he said, why don't you just test one versus the other? And so we did. And originally the conversion rate was about 50% of people downloading it totally for free versus about 30% once we put the opt-in form on. And that was fine by us because we then knew who these people were and we could communicate with them over time. But we also, we actually have a screen share version of it on our landing page so that people can actually look at it and be totally comfortable with what they're downloading before they download it. And if they're really keen and don't want to give us their name and email address, that's fine. They can just go to SlideShare and download it directly from SlideShare as well, and that's perfectly easy to do. We don't try and stop that at all. There's been thousands of people download it directly through SlideShare as well. So it doesn't really worry us, but I just feel...
That's the thing I saw you guys doing.
Pardon?
Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, it doesn't really worry us. If people want to opt in, that's great because then they'll get more and more of our templates and we feel we can deliver value that way. If they just want to take the template and run, that's totally fine too. Like it's up to the user really.
Yeah, and you still get the brand recognition and I guess even just having your name associated with David Meehan Scott is probably helped you in ways that you can't quantify.
Yeah, a lot of marketing people have heard of David. And they think it's pretty cool that we've got to do something with him, and yeah, that alignment with him has been really, really good.
So that I guess we've talked about flagship content. So this is, I guess, starting to get into the recommendations that you have for other people with businesses starting to get out in content marketing. So the first, well, probably not the first thing, but one of the big themes in the book is having flagship content. And you talk about, actually there's a quote in there that I liked that said, better always beats more.
Yeah, great question, Dan. Better always beats more. Tongue twister, that is. And by that, I mean, I just look back at my own experience, which is all I've got to draw from. But, it took me months and months to come up with that, or for Toby and I to come up with that web strategy planning template, because we had read hundreds of books, attended dozens of seminars, followed lots of bloggers, interviewed a handful of authors, and really what we did was try to distill all this stuff that we sort of knew and had experienced ourselves, but into a format that could actually be understood by a client or a prospective client who didn't have that whole experience and sort of learning phase that we had. And so we put lots of effort into, basically it was one piece of paper or one PDF, double-sided, and it took months, as I said. And if I look at the comparison between, the results of it, which has continued to pay dividends day in, day out for the last sort of 4 or 5 years since we've released it, versus spending, probably a month writing blog posts. I could have maybe written, 30 blog posts in a month or whatever, but I very much doubt, or my blog posts that I did write back then got nowhere near that sort of traction. And that's why I say better beats more, because one really good piece of content that's useful and, conveys some of your experience and knowledge has, for us anyway, had so much more traction. It's really given our marketing teeth, because people will download it, they want to share it, they want to opt in to our newsletter to receive it, and so the business value and the marketing value we've got from one piece of paper exceeds what we've written on the blog.
Yeah, we've definitely experienced the same thing. I guess the only challenge I would have is sometimes it's hard to know what piece of content is going to get those results. Like I've done some posts where I thought they're pretty good posts, and then they've gone nuts, and other ones I thought were really good and they haven't gone that well. So I guess that's a consideration. But I suppose what you're talking about here is something that's so well planned and so well executed and used so much that it's almost like a flagship thing that it can't really fail. It's kind of like the forefront of your marketing.
It is. I think if it's so valuable in that you've put so much effort and sort of knowledge into it, that I often say, and Jay Baer says it in his book Utility, but it's got to be so valuable that people would pay money for it if you ask them. And when it comes to actually uncovering this flagship piece of content, I find as well that if you look, you don't necessarily have to create something. We did, because we were quite a new business, but many existing businesses will have something that they use with, most likely, prospective customers that they share freely and give away to these people, but it might only be to 10 or 20 people a week.
Yeah.
And I ask clients to think of these things that's either in their head or on their server or in their drawers that they share to win business face-to-face. What if you release that onto the web? And what if you could release that so that hundreds or thousands of people found value from it? Then surely wouldn't that help in your sales and marketing efforts, because all these people now you've delivered value to, so I'm sure they're much more likely to choose you as the company to work with if they're the right fit.
Yeah, and maybe even something that they don't give away for free, maybe something that they share with their clients and they charge for. That might become something that's even more valuable and might, in the long run, be better for them to give it away for free to hundreds of thousands of people rather than charging 4 or 5 people for it.
Oh, absolutely. It challenges people's comfort zone quite a bit, but I also think if it feels like you're giving away too much, then you're on the money. That's what you need to be giving away. If it causes you a little bit of pain to give it away, then that's exactly what's going to have enough value to the recipient to make it worth their while, entering into a conversation with your organisation.
Yeah, one of the other themes in the book that I kind of picked up on was that there was a little quote. I don't know if this is actually a stat or if it was just kind of generalization, but it was something like, when people are looking for stuff online, most people aren't looking for something to purchase. Most of them are looking for information, and it kind of sits as like a justification for don't try to sell to everyone who gets to your site. Instead, give them some value, and then if there's only, I think it was something like 2% are actually looking to buy straight away. So if that's the case, what's happened to the other 98% that are going to your website if you're not giving them any value?
Totally, and that's a stat from HubSpot's research, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it. So the full picture of the stats is like the sales funnel. So you've got 75% of people at the top of the funnel. They've got a problem and they're looking for information to solve it. So if you've got a leaking tap, you might be looking up, how to fix that yourself. You're not looking for a plumber just yet. So most people are looking to solve their problem at the top of the funnel, 75%. So that's when you need blog content, downloads, PDFs, everything for free on your website. The next 23% of people realize that they've got a problem and that somebody in the marketplace can solve it for them. So the next 23% of people are looking to compare you to a competitor, which is where you need things like testimonials and guarantees. And this is where social media is really powerful, because it can humanize your business. People can get to know the people within the company and not just have it as this faceless organization. So once people have researched with that information, then they've compared you to a competitor. It's only that final 2% of people that are actually ready to take action because they've already been through that education and comparison process. And it's that last 2% where they're ready to pick up the phone and inquire, or they're ready to pull out their credit card and make a purchase. But see, most people make the mistake on their website of putting all their calls to action to buy now or inquire now. But if they haven't got educational stuff on their content, then they're not even in the running when a prospect is looking to make that purchase decision, because there will have been somebody else on the internet that's given them the educational content that they need and that comparison content. And my guess is then the people who only have the call to action to buy, they're not even being considered because somebody else has already started that relationship weeks or days or hours ago, depending on the urgency of the person's problem, that they have already decided, they've already shortlisted to a handful of people, and the people who buy now only, they're not even in the running.
Yeah, and I mean, it might just be second nature. They hear from you every week. They have got value from you. They've heard good things, and they might not even go to the web to look anymore. They might just simply reply to an email or give you a phone call, which happens in our business multiple times a day. All of our leads come through online, and paid customers more than one a day on average at the moment, and most of them have read some of our content, and all of them, we haven't hardly ever spoken to them directly, which is pretty remarkable.
It's amazing seeing it. It's amazing actually see it come into fruition. Hey, because you hear all this stuff, but actually seeing paid customers coming in who you've never spoken with, but who have read a lot of your content. It's really cool to see.
Let's wrap it up. That's really cool. I mean, as I say, I've read a good chunk of this morning, and it's amazing. I really wish I would have had something like this 5 years ago when I was starting. I wasted a lot of time on all sorts of stuff that was just a pure and utter waste of time and money. So where can people find the book, and where can people find out more about you?
Cool, Dan. So yeah, people can actually find the book online. Just search for it on Google, Web Marketing That Works. Search for it on Amazon. It does come with, what you'll see on the front cover is it comes with a bonus 33 free templates, and you don't need to buy the book to get your hands on those templates. Simply head over to bluewiremedia.com.au/book, and you can download all of those templates, and if you find them valuable and if you find them useful, then you're going to get a lot of value out of the book. So I would recommend head over, download the templates, and then if you like that, buy the book. Because really, as Dan said, I've also spent the last 9.5 years trying a lot of stuff that doesn't work and been lucky enough to stumble on a few things that do work. So Toby and I have basically documented the things that do work and put them into the book in the form of stories and practical how-to tips, as well as the templates and how to use them, so that really you can pick up the book, implement it, and fast-track a lot of the mistakes that I've made and that Toby's made and that I'm sure Dan's made as well over the years.
I just had a good idea, actually, which is kind of your idea, but I'll steal it. Are you comfortable giving away a copy of the book in return for doing, I think you mentioned on the email, doing a competition on our site? I just had an idea for what that competition could be. Absolutely, yeah. Happy to give it. We'll send a signed copy to one of your readers or listeners, Dan. Okay. So what I would like to hear from people on is what's been your least effective or biggest money wasting marketing effort in your business. So I'll kick that off because I've got a whole heap of ones. I will probably go with some dodgy SEO tactic, but head over to wpcurve.com/66, and that will redirect to this episode, and let us know what has been your worst marketing exercise ever. And Adam will choose a winner maybe after a week. So if you're listening to this on a podcast, if we say 20th of May 2014, we'll choose a winner on that date. So head over, leave a comment, and we'll send you a copy of the book. So that's been awesome, Adam. And where can people find you online if they want to thank you for this amazing interview? Yeah, cool. I'm on Twitter at Franklin_Adam, so my name in reverse, or else just my website, bluewiremedia.com.au. My details are on there, easy to find. So I'll read all the emails. I reply to everybody that writes in. So look, I really look forward to hearing from any of your listeners, Dan, and anyone that's read the book as well. Cool. All right. Well done. Congratulations on the book, and best of luck with the launch. And thanks for talking to us. It's a pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me.